Hello, my star children. Welcome to the first installment of Understanding Horror, a study in terror with an eldritch monster. I hope to make this a regular series that you can all enjoy. With that in mind, please leave feedback to let me know if you enjoyed this content, it was helpful to you, or if you have constructive criticism to add. I'm still figuring out how to use human devices, so any honest critiques will be welcome. I've spent a long time studying horror. I enjoy what it does to the human mind and what it can tell you humans about yourselves. But, just like someone who knows art can better appreciate the work of skilled artists, knowing horror can only increase your appreciation of the hard work and dedication that goes into its craft. Of course, the best way to start learning about any subject is at the beginning. With that in mind, we'll begin with part 1, establishing a baseline. Here, we're going to answer a very fundamental question, one we truly need to understand before we get any deeper. What is fear? Excuse me. Sorry about that. What is fear? In its most basic terms, fear is the emotion of perceived danger or threat. Fear is not just a good thing, it's a required thing for the existence of the human race. Without fear, a mortal being cannot survive. Without fear, humans will inevitably be consumed by the horrible things that go bump in the night. After all, you spent generations after generations learning how to not be eaten by things with teeth or things with poison and other such wonderful cruelties. Even in your modern world, fear keeps you safe. It tells you not to cross a busy intersection. It tells you that perhaps you shouldn't walk down that dark alley alone in the middle of the night. So why would you want to purposefully indulge in fear? I mean, I do it because I love those delicious feelings that you humans give off. But why would a human do it? For the same reason you ride roller coasters. To experience something in a controlled environment where you can conquer it. To experience that feeling of danger and to walk away from it, safe. One of the best ways to learn about a subject is to listen to the experts. While I considered calling in Yog-Sothoth to be a guest speaker, it turns out their voice annihilates the minds of mortals, so I'll settle for referencing one of the greatest and most prolific horror writers of our generation, Stephen King. Say what you want about Mr. King, but the simple fact is that the man has more experience writing horror and more success writing horror than almost any other person on this planet, and listening to those who have more success than you do is a hallmark of growing. So what does Mr. King have to say about horror? Basically, you can find everything he would want to say about writing horror in his book, which is more of a treatise on the subject matter of horror, if we're honest, The Danse Macabre. This book is a collection on writing types and an autobiography, and particularly in writing horror, and maybe one of the most important pieces of English literature I, as a horror enthusiast, have ever read. One thing that I love about it is this quote that begins, "And, I hope you have some fun with this book. Nosh and nibble at the corners or read through the mother straight through. But enjoy. That's what it is for, as much as any of the novels. Maybe there will be something here to make you think, or make you laugh, or just make you mad. Any of these reactions would please me. Boredom, however, would be a bummer." And it's true. One thing we have to remember at the end of the day is that these things are about emotion. Never leave your audience bereft of emotion. You should always be pushing some sort of emotion. Never let boredom seep in. Boredom kills fear because boredom is mundanity. Anyways, one of the most impactful things he talks about in this book is the levels of horror. There are 3 levels of horror that Stephen King describes. The first being revulsion, followed by horror, and then finally, terror. Revulsion is the lowest level of horror, in part because it's the easiest to achieve. Revulsion preys upon our body's natural instinct to pull away from things that might be diseased or signify danger, unless someone has been conditioned against it, such as a hospital employee or a military personnel, or has some natural inclination to overcome it. Revulsion simply is. When Jason cuts off someone's head and tosses it on the floor, the feeling that you have when you see that head roll across the ground is revulsion. When the heroine steps into a room and finds her friend's guts spread across... When the heroine steps into a room and finds her friend's guts spread out across the floor, and the rats are nibbling on the bits and pieces that wiggle, that's revulsion. It's the natural territory of torture porn and gore horror films. And while there may be some craft in the creation of the effect, some of the special effects, both of computer-generated and practical, of the greats in the horror industry are absolutely astounding pieces of artwork in and of themselves. The actual feeling of revulsion is very simplistic. Inserting my own feelings in the matter, I believe revulsion is a bit like the fart joke of the horror realm. A well-placed and well-timed one can enhance a comedy show, but if there's nothing to it but that, it just shows a lack of imagination and doesn't really get anywhere. The next stage up is horror. Horror is the realm that most horror lives in, for a very good reason. This is where the monsters come out to play. You can see the vampires, the werewolves. You can hear the monsters in the dark. You know what they are. You see their teeth and know that they are after you. Horror is the realm of the 25-foot spiders and the sledgy slimes that are trying to consume you. This is about where 60% of good horror lies, I'd say. This level is where we tap into our instincts about the dangers and how to avoid them. This is when our adrenaline keys up and our minds shift into gear about how to defend ourselves. Good horror will make you enter the state and keep you there, keep you guessing, keep you working on how to stay alive, and how afraid you are of the thing that generates the horror. Our final and most important level is terror. To explain terror, Stephen King says, "It is that feeling at midnight when the glass breaks to the window in your house and you have no idea what's coming. It is the time before the monster is revealed, when anything could be there." That moment of not knowing, that moment of unadulterated fear, that's when our imagines create things 100 times worse than could ever actually be there. Importantly, though, it's not really sustainable, and it has to be cultivated with care. It's so easy to lose terror. Anytime you've seen a art house style film where it doesn't really feel like there's anything actually scary, or you feel like the movie expects you to be afraid but you can't, that is a failure at terror. When you open the door, it could be a 30-foot tall monstrous bug, and your brain will still go, "Oh, thank the gods it wasn't a 60-foot tall monstrous bug." Terror is tricky. Terror is hard to maintain. In future series, I hope to go over more about the needs and necessity to sustain terror in a long-term sense. But for now, I think this is what we'll work with. Thank you all for coming to this very first installment of Learning Horror with an Eldritch Horror. I hope you have a good day, and remember, my star children, keep your loved ones close, for you never know when the stars will align, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.